Hi there, Mark here again. Welcome to this video, which is my build guide part 1 for the Carisma SCA-1E kit. This will end up being a Range Rover, my particular kit, but I'm pretty sure that this build guide for the chassis alone will be relevant to any SCA-1E kit that you've got. So let's get on with it. So in the kit you get various bags. I think it's from bag A to bag J. I think so anyway. So the first thing I've done is open all the bags and empty the parts into plastic containers like this. I've got the bag number there so I know what it is, and so basically that corresponds then with the manual. So for bag A you've got steps 1 to 5, and that will complete all parts that are in bag A, and then so on we move on to part B, and again follow using all the parts in bag B till that step's finished. So the first part is the shock assembly, and basically we have to follow these diagrams. There's not really much in the way of instructions, so you're basically just following the actual diagrams in sequence. So let's get on with it. As you can see, I've already built 3 of the shocks up, and they went together quite well. They're feeling quite nice, so I'll just show you how I did those. The first thing you want to do is to get your shock body and disassemble it, because it comes all kind of screwed together. So you just want to take all that apart. Then you need to get your shaft. Notice that there's 2 different ends on this. One is all thread and the one is partly thread. So you want the partly threaded end. There's a small washer that goes on top of that, as shown here. Then you want your piston or your valve, goes on there. And then there is a tiny nylock nut that holds that all in place. And from doing the others, I wouldn't tighten this up completely at the moment. It's going to be a bit easier if we leave that for a second. The next thing we want to do is to get these spacers and the O-rings into the bottom of the shock there. So the first thing we need to do is to get one of the O-rings, which are small white kind of silicone O-ring, and put some grease on that. I've used a bit of Tamiya grease here because it's silicone, I think. Then there's the small plastic spacer, more grease, the second O-ring, and then the last spacer, and then simply tighten up the bottom cap. Now I was in a bit of a dilemma about this instruction at the top here, because it shows, I think, this part here, which is this big O-ring, and it looks like it's telling you to put it on the top, but I did try that, and what happens when you screw the cap on, it kind of just sticks out. It doesn't seal anything at all. I hope you can see that there. So yeah, that doesn't fit at all, so that's obviously not to go there. And anyway, this will be sealed by the diaphragm when it goes in the top, the rubber diaphragm. So take that back off. If you look at the collar that is for the spring tension, again, I'm not sure if you can see in this light, but there is a recess just in the top there, and I think that is where that is supposed to go, because without the O-ring in there, this part moves around very easily. It's a very sloppy fit on there, so I think that's what that is for. So pop that in there. Hopefully you can see the O-rings inserted in the top of that, and then that's much more of a snug fit onto that thread, and I think that's going to stop that from changing the spring tension as you run the car. Step 3, we're going to put this through into the shock body. Get rid of any grease that's on the end of the shaft now. Then you need the shock bottom and the ball end, and we get that ball end in the hole at the bottom. I tend to just push it down onto my worktop to do this. Okay. And then this is why I said don't tighten up that nylock nut inside, because we need to tighten these up against each other now, and that saves having to grip the shaft with a pair of pliers and maybe risk damaging that. So just get that started. put something through to hold the bottom of that shock bottom. Push this up, and then we can get a 5mm box onto that box wrench and do them up against each other. Okay, now that nylock is just gripping the end of the shaft there. You can see a quick note there, it says insert the shock top cap assembly and then assemble, so I'm going to do that. So what we need to do is get the top of the shock, push that through the top cap, then get the diaphragm, put that in place. Might help just to push that in so it's seated properly, and then simply fill up with oil. I'm using this number 900. I'm not sure exactly what that equates to with other measurements of the shock viscosity, but it's pretty thick stuff from what I'm used to. But there are a lot of holes in the piston, so I think we need a decent thickness of shock oil in here. But obviously I'll have to run it to see whether it needs tuning, which it probably will. But I think this might be a decent starting point. The other shocks seem to feel quite good with this in. And obviously we just need to move the piston up and down and then let the bubbles rise to the surface before we put the cap on. We fill it to the top, and then it's simply a case of screwing that top cap onto the body. And there is a bleed hole, so any excess oil will come out of that hole if you've overfilled it too much. And this is when you can tighten the bottom and top caps nice and tightly up against each other. So finally we just slip the spring on, just do that collar up a bit, get your retaining piece, just clip that over the shaft and around the bottom. It's a nice snug fit, and there we go. The fourth shock is finished. It feels quite nice and smooth. Yeah, they seem really nicely made. So yeah, there's the 4 shocks on to step B. So for this you want all your parts from parts bag B, which I've got one half here because I've already done the other one. There's only one step. It says steps 1 and 2, but the step 2 is just showing you the finished article. You've got these tiny little butt head screws that we need to put into the differential case. So we're making 2 locked up differentials. As I said, I've just done this one. I'll show you how I did that. As you can see in the instructions, you've got this plastic case here, and it shows in this part here 15823, which is a really small steel kind of sleeve, and it says add thread lock. Well, the only thread lock I've got says it damages plastic, so I'm actually going to glue it in with this stuff. I've used this on other plastics before and it's quite good, so I'm just going to coat this thing on the outside with glue and insert it in the hole. So that's it in place, and as I said, I think it's just to stop that from spinning inside the plastic. So that's my solution anyway. Just want to pop this aluminium part into the case, and then we need to screw on the gear onto this with 4 of those M2 screws. Just get that started. I can get this in place and get the other screws partially screwed in. But don't screw one down all the way. If I were you, I'd do them in sequence, so we're torquing them all down evenly rather than one at a time. And as I said, when they're most of the way in, just go around using opposites just to torque each one up about the same, and just keep adding a bit more tension or torque as you go until they're all as far as you dare tighten them into the plastic, basically. You don't want to go too mad because you will strip the plastic out the case, so you just need to feel for it. So yeah, feels about right. And then finally it shows fitting the bushings, which are these, which if you've got those, put those on. But I've got the kit with the full bearing set, so I'm just going to pop those one on each side, and that's your 2 locked up diffs finished. So on to parts bag C, where we're doing 3 steps here, and then 4, 5 and 6 on this page, and we're going to be making up the axles. I've already done the one, the two are exactly the same, and it should end up looking something like this. First of all, you need this part of the casing, and you need to push your bushings or your bearings onto the outside and the inside. And then we've got this small shaft that's got a hole in one end and a thread in the other. What we need to do is put the pinion gear, it calls it the diff pinion gear, onto this end. Okay, so there's the first problem I've had with this kit. The other one went in okay, but with this shaft here and the pinion gear, or the diff pinion gear, it didn't fit in there. So what I've had to do, you might be able to see, is I've had to file the flats down on the shaft because they weren't formed properly, and now it does fit in. So I hope that's a one-off with my kit. I hope that doesn't happen to yours, but if it does, you could send it back, I suppose. But for a quick fix, I've just filed the flats with a small hobby file, and it fits now. So we can get that part on. What we need to do is to get the small countersunk screw that fits in there, put a bit of thread lock on that, and fit it in the hole. So what I recommend you do before you fit it into the case is put something through the hole in that shaft and then nip that up tightly like so, and then simply we can just pop that through the case, through those bearings that we put in earlier. With that gear fitted in there now, we can get on to step 2, which is fitting on the arms or the axle ends. These pieces do fit in together, they're keyed like so. So make sure you've got the orientation right with these holes here in that central casing pointing upwards, and these arms here pointing backwards in the same direction as the shaft that you've just fitted. And then we've got 2 tiny little socket head screws to fit in the side. These are 8mm long, and one goes in there and the other just underneath it in that hole there. As it says here, the left and right are the same, so repeat for the other side. So both sides of the axle are fitted now, and what I recommend after doing the first one is don't fully tighten up all these screws until you've got the whole thing pretty much together. So get it kind of tightish, but don't tighten it all the way. You'll need that bit of movement to get it all together. So once we've done that, we spin it round, and then you need to get that locked diff that you made before, and make sure again with those 2 mount holes at the top there in the centre, you need your diff in like so, and we need to apply some grease to all of these gears. Next for bag C is step 4. So we're going to be fitting this part onto the back of the axle assembly. So again, you've got these 2 mounting points, the 2 screw holes at the top, again with those holes there, and this is going to fit in here. And then we've got 4 17mm 2mm screws go in there, and the 4 8mm screws go into these holes at the side, as in the other side of the axle. And now we can go about fully tightening up all the screws we've just fitted, the 8mm and the 17mm, so you can do them all up now. In step 5, all we have to do is fit this cover onto the back there, and it doesn't matter which way up it goes, I don't think, it just clips in. All we need to do is fix it now with 4 of these little tiny 4x2 screws, and there's a note here saying be careful not to strip the hole, so don't over tighten these, else you will be threading the plastic. So yeah, just 4 of those hold this case in place. So that's the cover fitted with those 4 tiny screws, and they will thread easily, so be careful with those. And the last step is step 6 for bag C, and it's just putting this kind of brace on the top here, and we're going to put in 6 of these 3B8mm screws. So that's the last one. So you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6 of those 3mm screws. And when you finish that, that is the end of bag C, and you should have 2 identical looking axles. So there we go, that's where we've got to so far. I know we haven't got too much built, but I don't want these videos to go on for too long. And I'm not sure about the level of detail that I've gone into, so this is where I'm going to ask for your help. It'd be great if you can give me some feedback down in the comments. Do you want me to speed up the build a little bit, skip over some of the more obvious parts maybe, or is this the kind of level of detail that you're interested in? Yeah, as I said, it'd be great if you can let me know. I'd really appreciate that. Just one quick thing, I couldn't wait to put one of these lovely beadlock alloy wheels together, so I've had a quick go at one of them. Obviously that'll be in a later video, but that's come out really nice, went together really well, so yeah, looking forward to doing the other 3. Just to say thanks for following along, I appreciate it. Hope everyone's keeping safe and well, and hope to see you on the next one. Bye.